Hi there, history fans. So today we're continuing with the epic history TV series called Napoleonic Wars. And today we have the video called Napoleon Defeats Russia, Friedland 1807. So we already covered the Battle of Jena, the Battle of Austerlitz, and the Siege of Toulon, and also the infantry tactics back then. The link is going to be here. If you didn't watch it, you can re-watch it or watch it and then come back. But yeah, we're going to jump into the series. As always, I would like to have your thoughts, opinions, corrections on the things that I say in the comment section below. I really appreciate your input and so on. And also your thoughts and the way Napoleon and his, let's call it, adventure throughout Europe is taught in your country. Is it like more of a positive view or a negative view or a neutral view? But yeah, as always, the link to the original video is going to be in the description below. Go give them a view and a like. Subscribe to their channel if you like their content, because this channel is not only about reaction and doing projects, but also supporting every, like creator on YouTube. Because we want to grow the history community on YouTube and to empower every channel to make more videos and more high quality videos. But okay, let's jump into the video.
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor Skillshare, home of more than 22,000 online classes. Find out about our exclusive special offer at the end of the video. One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor...
Just a quick recap. So we saw the Battle of Austerlitz, where Napoleon kind of crushed the Austrian army and the Russian army. And then he had the Battle of Jena, a big battle, where he crushed the Prussian army, which was considered maybe one of the best armies, like continental armies in Europe. And now he's going through Prussia as he defeated their army. And Russia went into the territory of Prussia to help out the Prussian leaders to fight off Napoleon. So yeah, just a quick recap.
Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena.
They did the recap.
But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Yeah, as you can see, like the territory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was divided between Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Most of the territorial gains went to Russia. As I did already a video and a lot of Polish people commented under the video, I asked the question like which part of Poland was like more developed. What are they teaching you in your schools and so on? And they actually said that the Russian territory was like the least advanced, like the least money was invested into the Polish territory, Russian-controlled Polish territory. The most industrialized and like economically well-off territory of Poland that was occupied or partitioned was the Prussian part, and the one part that had like the most cultural flourishment, like architecture and music and so on, and that had the most liberties for Polish like sentiments and so on, was actually the Austrian part. But the thing that you need to remember with the partition and the dissolvement of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Poles that are still living there, they still have that national fever or not national identity, and they still want an independent, like Poland. And as Napoleon came there, he actually instated a duchy, and at the beginning, a lot of Poles were like, yeah, we're going to support Napoleon because he wants to make a Polish state and so on. But as the wars continued and everything continued, of course, the French army needed more resources to fund the wars and the adventures and so on. And a lot of the money that was extracted for the war effort came from the lands that they occupied, including Poland, and especially the small German states that were allied with them and so on. So as far as I know, the Poles, at the beginning, the Poles were like enthusiastic about Napoleon, and because of his introduction of the Code Napoleon and so on, but eventually they turned on him because they felt like he was just using them economically for their own gains. But correct me if I'm wrong or if you have another opinion.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their saviour, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home. Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide. Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move. They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau. The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history.
Yeah, how many times did Murat, forgive me my French, I'm not good at French, as I said already, but he kind of was essential for the victories of Napoleon, because he intervened so much and he saved his army a lot of times.
At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost a third of their armies.
So 6,000 casualties, wounded 15, prisoners 1,000. God. What is it, like 1/10 of the army or something like that? And you need to take into account that they're already this is already a long time that they're away from France. And they're constantly fighting and fighting and fighting. And as Napoleon is losing his main army that he had at the beginning, which was trained, which was experienced, with older soldiers and so on, and when new recruits arrived, they were also recruits from, like Germany and other allied states, which weren't that, truly loyal to Napoleon. And he also had a lot of young conscripts, where they didn't have that much fighting experience. So the army is slowly dwindling away, and the experienced forces of the army are also dwindling away, and they get reinforced with younger, unexperienced forces or men.
In the carnage. After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June. Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Aller River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' Reserve Corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
So there we have the battle.
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Aller River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army. Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy. Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river, and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night. The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
Yeah, I would like to hear your opinion on this one. That's also something that went through my mind. Like they're crossing the river, and then they won't have any chance to retreat, maybe to the north here somehow. But then they would also need to retreat through the village, and like use those things that they built, like the small bridges. But on the other hand, there is a saying, or I think that it's actually also from the Art of War from Sun Tzu. It's that men will fight more eagerly if they don't have a way to retreat. Like imagine you're a soldier somewhere here, and then they attack you, and then you don't have any way to retreat. You're going to fight for your life. Like, you're more eager to fight, and not to surrender or whatever. And this small river bank or whatever, that's catastrophic because it cuts the army in half. But I can understand the initiative that he wanted to make, just to crush those small battalions of French soldiers and then maybe retreat or continue further. But as we always see, Napoleon's or the French army's mobility is key. They can reinforce very quickly, they're highly mobile, and that's one of the ways that they are always outflanking their enemies, outsmarting their enemies, and so on. But yeah, I would like to hear your opinion on this picture that we have right now.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Aller River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat.
Too small. The retreat path for such a large army is too small.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlack Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot. Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack. With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river. But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army.
40%. 40%. Imagine that. 40% of your army gone. Gone.
The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed. Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the
This conference is very important. Just listen to this.
middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport. Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed. While Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold. and it was Prussia who would lose most in the treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother Jerome, and the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish on the road to their own state.
As we said, as Napoleon advances throughout Europe, he makes new states, new territories, and so on. And as we can see, the Kingdom of Westphalia, and it was the case in other new territories that he gained or made. He instated his brothers and relatives and people who were loyal to him, because he wanted to establish a dynasty. He wanted to get more legitimacy, and that's why he crowned himself also emperor and so on. And if you watch at the map right now, here, Austria, the Austrian Empire, one of the biggest ones in Europe, knocked out. Prussia knocked out, and then you have, in land Europe, I'm not counting Great Britain here, because Great Britain is kind of secure because of its naval force. And then the last big empire that you could face threats from is Russia. And Russia now makes a peace treaty with Napoleon at Tilsit, at the river Neman. And Napoleon has just free hand to do whatever he wants with Central Europe. And he knocks out one of the major superpowers of Europe, and that's Prussia. But with that, now bear with me. With that, as we mentioned, not the princess, but the queen of Prussia, Louise, she was a very big symbol for Prussian resistance against Napoleon, and she also continued after this. She wanted to, to take back the pride of Russia and everything, and she became kind of a symbol of Prussian defiance. With that, Prussians started, that's probably going to be mentioned later on in the future videos, but Prussians started to talk about a German nation, a German ethnical group, German state, which is divided between those, small duchies that are now under control of France and so on. And a lot of, later on in the Prussian army, a lot of young recruits were also students, which started to make, to make nationalistic or German nationalistic songs, where they go out and write, where does the German land end? Where does the German land start? Is it in Prussia? Is it in Westphalia? Is it in Bavaria? No. It's everywhere where the German language is heard, or something like that. So you can see that the German national identity, which was actually a unintentional byproduct by the Napoleonic Wars, started to integrate culturally, especially culturally, the German states. And by dissolving those hundreds and hundreds of small states into bigger chunks, Napoleon kind of made it easier for those territories to unite, because they had less conflicts with each other. If it makes any sense for you, I don't know if I kind of if I made it kind of clear enough, but yeah, the German sentiment throughout the Napoleonic War, and especially later on after Friedland and after the Russian campaign, German nationalism just exploded, and they wanted to unify. And in in regards to France, the French people kind of united under the color or they kind of united under the new political system, you know, like Code de Napoleon, new things and so on. But as the German states had different laws and different, you know, like approaches and laws and so on, the Germans wanted to unify in a cultural way. That's why I emphasize the German language, and the German nationalism was born because of the German culture, language, tradition, and so on. And not like the French one, which was, you know, like, we're now French citizens who are under the same rule, under the same laws, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I hope that it was kind of clear.
Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard. Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe.
Yeah.
Alexander...
And important for that time period, Napoleon already instated the Continental Blockade of Great Britain. So none of the European continental powers were, or they shouldn't trade with Great Britain, and he actually hoped that he is going to starve Great Britain into subjugation. But as we know, Great Britain had naval dominance, they could get things from their colonies, and because the European coastline is just so long, they couldn't control everything, so most of the blockade it wasn't successful because of the black market. Because a lot of people just saw profit in it and they wanted to trade with Great Britain.
Even agreed to join the Continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem. The Continental system didn't work. Not only was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade. The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands. Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety.
Yeah.
The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe.
Didn't know that.
But most disastrously for Napoleon, the Continental system would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire.
What, Spain and Portugal?
The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the Continental system. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight. It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning. Thanks to our sponsor Skillshare for supporting this video. Skillshare membership
make it a
offers
little
instant
bit
access.
and let it roll. Okay, there's a lot to say about the Battle of Friedland, the Treaty of Tilsit, and especially at the Spanish and Portuguese campaign, and the Continental blockade and everything. I mean, there is so much information that you could put down into a, you know, like this small video, but I like it how they cover almost everything, you know, like they mention first always the things that kind of led to the battle, then they analyze the specific battle, and then they kind of also explain what the consequences of that battle were. But I'm really interested in, yeah, a big shout out to their sponsors and their patrons. But I'm really interested in I'm really interested, a lot of people already commented, you know, like in the comment section of the previous videos, how they are taught in school about Napoleon, the wars and so on in their countries. But I'm really interested on your perspective, like if you're from I don't know, the Netherlands, Germany, or you know, like today's, or back then Prussian territory, Poland, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, especially Denmark now. What's with Denmark? What's their relationship through to the British invasion of their naval force and the island Helgoland, and so on. So I'm always kind of interested, and people are always interested, how different perspectives on one topic look like from different countries. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. We're definitely going to continue with this series. If you like this video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. If you want to be part of our community, just hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, so that you get notified when new videos come out. And yeah, until next time, see ya.